Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our first webinar of 2021. I don't think it's too late to wish you all a happy new year. We're still in January, so I hope that still counts, and hope everybody's doing okay and managed to have a good break over the Christmas period. As you know, the topic for today's webinar is financial well-being, and we've got a fantastic panel lined up today, which I will introduce very shortly. Just to go through some housekeeping, first of all, as usual, we reiterate these points every time. The best experience really that you will have for this experience is if you use Google Chrome. If you do have any audio or visual issues, apparently if you refresh the page, that should resolve them. But obviously, if you still have issues, then just let us know through the chat. That would be fantastic, and we'll try to help you. As per usual, we have got the chat function there, and what we encourage you all to do is to introduce yourself so we know who's participating today, but also to use the function as much as possible to network. Obviously, given that we can't meet in person anymore, it's been nice to see that people are still networking kind of through the webinars and use this chat function to do that as well. What we'd also like to do is to encourage you to ask some questions, and there is a questions tab at the side of the screen where we would hope you can post your questions. And what we'll do is we'll pick up as many of them as we can do towards the end of the session. If we don't get through them all, because we have got quite a lot to cover, or if there are any questions that people don't want to ask in the open forum, all of our panel members have agreed that we can respond to them after the session and post them somewhere, either on our website or get back to people individually. And just to remind everybody as well that these sessions are recorded. So if you have the urge to watch it again, then you'll be able to do that through our YouTube channel. Or if you have colleagues that have not been able to make it today, then obviously you can share the content with them at a more convenient time. So for me, just to set the context for today, as you know, even in normal times, employee health and wellbeing are huge priorities for good employers. But we've seen in the last year that it's kind of been clear that there has to be an integrated approach to supporting employee wellbeing. We all know that there are kind of links between health, happiness and productivity, and there are characteristics of employment that need to be constantly monitored and adapted, and there are many of those that need you to have an individual approach to them. We know that in these times, we need to think about things that can't clearly be seen or that are clearly visible. With virtual meetings now, etc., it's not always easy to pick up body language and to pick up where people might be feeling stressed. But we do know that we need to consider how financial concerns affect employee health and well-being, and recognise that as employers, you are providing an income for those individuals and therefore play a vital role in looking after your employee financial well-being. We know there's lots of stress out there at the moment, not just directly for the individuals that you're working with, but for their family and friends as well. There's kind of uncertainty around the employment market at the moment, pay levels, the lack of financial awareness, lots of things that are having an impact on individual performance as well. And also kind of some of the perceptions that because of all of those pressures that people are not feeling particularly valued, and that can also have an impact on self-esteem and productivity. We can see some light at the end of the tunnel in terms of kind of the public health issues. We've got the vaccine on the horizon. Well, it's here, and hopefully before long we'll all have the vaccine in our arms. But we know that we're going to be facing an economic crisis as well, and something that we're going to have to kind of pull together to support employees through this particular time, and to try and support them to become more financially independent. So today's webinar has been set up because we know that January is always a particularly challenging month. It's when people do look to finance, etc. So we've got a fantastic panel lined up that will help us to kind of look at some of those issues in more detail. So I'm really, really pleased to say that our panel today comprises Phil Conley, who's the Promoting Compliance Manager at HMRC. So he's one of the good guys, so he's here to help us today. We've got James Kelly, who's the Regional Partnerships Manager at the Money and Pensions Service. We've also got Andy Brown, who's the Chief Executive Officer of Manchester Citizens Advice Bureau Service. And we've also got Richard Forster, who's the Senior Bank Manager at Lloyds Banking Group. So in charge of the flagship Market Street branch, but also Greater Manchester branches as well. So we really do have a really good panel with us today, and I'm sure we're going to get a lot out of the session. So first of all, I'm going to come to Phil just to ask a question. Phil's lead is around national minimum wage. So I've just got a couple of questions to kind of open up for us, Phil. And they are, in terms of the national minimum wage, what are the costs to an employer of getting it wrong? And secondly, are there any specific risks of underpayment when the rates go up? Because we are aware that they do go up on the 1st of April. So I don't know if you want to respond to that one initially.
Yeah, thanks. Well, I'll do the costs first. So unfortunately, the costs of getting it wrong with respect to national minimum wage are actually quite high. So as you would expect, imagine you're an employer and you're in the situation where you've underpaid some of your workers. I suppose as you would expect, you'd have to pay arrears back to those workers in question. Those arrears can go back up to 6 years, so it can add up. And those arrears are paid at the current national minimum wage rate, so they get uplifted. So the historic rates don't apply; it's the current rates that apply. So you're on the hook for arrears. That's the first thing. The second thing is you will then be subject to a penalty of 200% of the arrears amount. So no small change. And then laid on top of that, you could be named in a government press release for underpaying the minimum wage. So it's that kind of reputational aspect to it. So the costs are quite high. You mentioned about the kind of risks at the moment with the pending rate increase on the 1st of April. That is a point in the year where we do see lots of employers quite unintentionally, I think, lapsing into a non-compliant situation. Obviously, the rates are going up. It brings more workers kind of into scope, if you like, for underpayment. And in a kind of just from failure to act, employers don't adjust the payroll in time and so forth. We do unfortunately see quite a large number of employers, sometimes momentarily, but certainly kind of lapsing into that non-compliant situation.
Right. So are there any things, Phil, that employers should be doing at the moment to prepare for that, to make sure they are compliant by the 1st of April?
Yeah, I mean, the most obvious thing is to make yourself aware of the rates that are going to be coming in on the 1st of April. It's a little bit of an unusual year as well, in so much as in addition to the rates increasing across the different age bands for national minimum wage, the threshold for the higher rate, called the national living wage, is actually being reduced from 25 years to 23 years. So again, clearly, it depends on your workforce, doesn't it? But there's every chance that you might have a worker there that's almost going to kind of get a double pay rise. The rates were going up and they've now fallen into the national living wage category. So it's about identifying those workers early doors and making the necessary payroll adjustments in time for the 1st of April.
Oh, that's great. And you're right about the reputational consequences of getting it wrong as well, because there was a recent article, wasn't there, that highlighted those employers that were non-compliant.
That's right. Yeah, there was just a recent round of naming, and that usually plays out in the national press as you would expect. But if you look at the list in details of employers that have been named, it's a long list with a long tail. And rightly or wrongly, unfortunately, those smaller businesses, they get affected by the reputational damage as well. So it doesn't play out in the national press for Joe Bloggs the butchers, but it quite often plays out in the local press. And you could argue that the reputational damage is as bad, if not worse, for some kind of large multinational.
Yeah. So there are some huge penalties there, really, aren't there, both financially and reputationally for employers in getting that wrong, and making sure basically keeping on top of it and understand it. So it's great that you're trying to help those employers get through this. So that's brilliant. So I'm going to move on then to James and to talk about the Money and Pension Service. So James, can you tell us a little bit about how MAPS can support employers?
Yeah, so thanks, Carol. Just to introduce myself, I'm James Kelly, the Regional Manager for the Money and Pension Service, working right across the Northwest, Greater Manchester, Cheshire, Lancashire, Cumbria. So I just thought I'd give you some quick slides today, Carol, just to give a little bit of a visual update beyond what I'm talking about. So I'll just click through onto the second page. So for those of you that don't know MAPS, I know many of you will, but who are MAPS. We're the Money and Pension Service, and we basically bring together, on behalf of government, 3 financial guidance bodies. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. First is Money Advice Service, second is Pension Wise, and the third is the Pensions Advisory Service. And people very often ask me why there's 2 pension elements within our branding. And the reason for that is Pension Wise basically is our local pension support service. It helps people who are 50 years or over in age as they prepare to retire. TPAS is our technical pension service. And what we mean by that is they handle a lot of queries over the phone or the internet or WhatsApp, and they'll take queries from people at any stages in their life, Carol. So we have 2 big call centers, and they work in terms of that information. And the other bit I'd just try and get across today, just as we're speaking to people perhaps who don't know quite as much about us, is our role is we're an arm's length department of DWP, and our role is to give people the effective ability to make good financial decisions. And everything that we're going to talk about today in terms of support, it's free and it's independent. So whatever we do, there's no tie to a bank or a building society, pension company or an insurance company. Carol, the slide has just disappeared. Sorry, it's come back. Just having a quick moment. Just a quick one about us. So really just to encompass that, we work with both employers, we work with consumers, we work with colleagues and staff. So our vision really is wherever anybody is in the UK, whether in a small firm, a medium firm, a large firm, we work with a whole succession of organisations. And what we want to do is to be able to make those people make the most of their money and pensions at whatever stage of the journey they are in terms of their life. So just quickly, what kind of support does that mean that we provide? So just to reinforce that point, everything we provide is free and impartial, but we spend a lot of time creating content, creating tools and calculators. I'm just going to quickly show you some of those, Carol, before we move on to other speakers, that help people keep track of their money and their plans. So we work on creating diagnostic tools and calculators that firms can use. There's no charge. They can take them onto their website. We work with big organisations like Check Your Land Rover. Done a lot of work recently locally with Bury Council. So the information we provide is all available to be syndicated or linked through to. And the other part that we also do is we make sure that support is not just available online. We know that some people like to speak about money issues, and a lot of employees will like to speak about money issues with a person on the phone or with somebody in an office. Obviously, the face-to-face element is very difficult at the moment, but we still have that option. In terms of the key items that we cover, I won't go through them all, but you can see we cover the wide range of issues that employers may be concerned about for their colleagues. So debt and borrowing, homes and mortgages, worker benefits, pensions and retirements. We cover things like insurance as well. And there's the key links there for people who today, I know we're going to share this slide deck. You can jump onto our Money Advice website and see all the information there. We also, as I said to you earlier on, speak with people about WhatsApp, because we find a lot of younger people in their 20s and 30s like that kind of engagement. We have a telephone helpline, and you can see we have extended hours from Monday to Friday. And then just to kind of quickly give you an example of the kind of things that we supply and provide to employing firms and to organisations. So as I mentioned a few minutes ago, we build tools, and the Money Navigator is our new tool that we've built. Government and financial guidance bodies asked us to build that in response to the COVID situation, to the pandemic. Really straightforward, simple tool that within 15 minutes, people can input their data. They can recognise maybe the impact on their finances. Perhaps they've been furloughed or their partner's been furloughed. Perhaps they've lost some of their income due to reduced hours. See what they're entitled to. See what benefits and payment holidays may be available from banks or building societies, and then understand where to go to for free support. It's not just us. We're a government arm's length body, but we understand that there are other trusted organisations, for example, Citizens Advice are represented on the call today, or people like Step Change, Debt Charity, or Shelter, organisations that we understand people will go to. We're very happy to help signpost people to go to those organisations as well. And then just the other thing that I just is very topical, and a lot of the organisations we've worked with have taken and syndicated or linked through to us on. We've built a whole brand new coronavirus hub since really the start of the pandemic, and that's updated all the time. One of the advantages of being very close to DWP and Treasury and Cabinet Office is we are very close in terms of that communication. We know when things are coming down the line. So we've built a whole suite and range of information, some written information, information on the website, information that people can speak to our colleagues about, and also information that's really easy to digest. So one of the things we do, Carol, is we try not to talk in jargon. and we really try to talk to people in really straightforward language. We've built some YouTube videos working with trusted partners about key issues like furlough, or what to do if you're behind as an employee with your rent or with your mortgage. And those videos aren't long, they're 3 to 10 minutes, so that people can dip into them, see them on YouTube, and get an understanding of what we can support them with, and also the partners that we work with can support them with. And then just quickly, just as my contact details there, my colleague Paul Rhodes, who works with me, he's also on this call. He's not speaking today, but I'm sure we'll take some questions throughout the conversation today. But if anybody wants to get in touch with Paul or myself, we're very happy to provide support, provide the content, the tools, the videos that I've just talked about over the last kind of 5 or so minutes, and also to do updates and webinars and join sessions with organisations and firms and employers with their colleagues on a regular basis. That's a key part of what we do, Carol.
That's really helpful. Thank you for that, James. I'm actually quite surprised myself at how much you do cover, all of the range of topics that you cover and provide support with. That's really impressive. And I particularly like that Money Navigator tool, and the fact that it takes a lot of the kind of hard work out of kind of looking for information for you, because obviously it's doing all the scanning behind the scenes. And more importantly, one of the things that you said there that really kind of I liked was the fact that you don't use jargon or anything in the videos, because I think for lots of people, sometimes the jargon can be quite scary and can put you off, and it can be quite confusing. So I think removing that and making things as simple for people as possible can only help. So that's fantastic, and that's a fantastic resource that we can hopefully make sure kind of more of our supporters are aware of. That's brilliant. Thank you.
Great.
So I'm going to move on to Andy now. So Andy, can you tell us a little bit about the services that are available to enable employers to better support their employees from your perspective, from the Citizens Advice Bureau?
Yeah, thanks, Carol. Just by way of introduction, I'm Andy Brown, the Chief Executive of Citizens Advice Manchester. Citizens Advice have local offices across Greater Manchester. There are 10 local offices. We provide free, independent, confidential and impartial advice to residents in those localities. Between us, we employ over 60, 70 paid staff, and we're supported by approximately 300 trained volunteers. And we focus our advice in areas of social welfare law that include employment debt, benefit, housing, etc. This graphic demonstrates the accessibility of the service, more so when we're not locked down, though there is a locality, various access points in the localities that people can get the advice from. And I'll talk about some of the other access methods in a moment. So who have we helped over the last year? Across Greater Manchester, we've supported over 68,000 people to resolve some 135,000 problems. In Manchester alone, we've helped a whole host of people with fuel vouchers, homelessness, issues around food, redundancy, universal credit. They're pretty big numbers and they're pretty impressive. We're the biggest supplier of advice across GM to people with mental health issues, to people with housing issues, and to people with long-term health conditions. We've seen, unfortunately, across the last 12 months, all indicators of poverty increasing, with inquiries around food banks and redundancy, fuel bills, all rising rapidly. In terms of our impact, recent surveys that we've conducted demonstrate that 7 out of 10 people that we've supported have said that we've helped them to resolve their problem. 82% say we make a positive difference to their lives, and 9 out of 10 people are either satisfied or very satisfied with the service that they get from us. So just a quick look at the impact of COVID-19 on residents in Greater Manchester. So what we've seen so far is one of crisis that we believe certainly has the potential to far surpass the crisis of the economic recession of 2008. The pandemic, as we've seen, has left large numbers of households financially insecure and exposed to income shocks that they are unlikely to bounce back from, potentially for many years to come. What really concerns us is from April 2021, when the protective measures, I wish I could spell the word moratorium, when the protective measures come to an end, particularly furlough, the sort of moratorium on evictions, we will see a massive surge in the need for and the demand for advice, particularly around areas such as claiming universal credit. And what we've seen in the last 2 or 3 months is an increase in people accessing our service that don't generally access it because previously they've been in comfortable employment, they've not been exposed to redundancy or unemployment. I think picking up from something that James was talking about, the Money Advice and Pension Service are predicting that demand for debt advice will continue to climb throughout 2021, increasing potentially by 60%. In terms of energy advice, Citizens Advice research shows that 2.8 million people are behind on their energy bills at this current time due to the pandemic. And with more and more people spending more and more time working from home, that's only likely to increase. Further Citizens Advice research highlights that over 500,000 people in England are behind on their rent because of COVID-19. And again, we anticipate when the protective measures are removed in April that there will be a spike in evictions and possession proceedings. So how can we help? How can we help your colleagues, the people that you employ? Certainly with debt advice, James has talked about the Money Advice and Pension Service. We're commissioned through our national organisation, Citizens Advice, to deliver some of their services on their behalf. So we negotiate with priority creditors such as landlords, mortgage companies. We can arrange short-term debt solutions and other solutions such as debt relief orders, pro rata lump sum settlements, etc. We can undertake financial health checks for your colleagues and the people that you employ. We give financial education, capability and literacy, and that includes advice around budgeting and understanding their income and expenditure. We can support, as I've mentioned, with dealing with the financial effects of redundancy, and we also run on behalf of MAPS their pension-wise advice service, and we can give pensions advice and sustainability planning for people over the age of 50. We can also help maximise income and tackle fuel poverty. We provide a universal credit help to claim service and access to in-work benefits. We can provide energy advice, and we have access to such things as fuel vouchers and vouchers to get white goods where people are really struggling. And we can support people to switch energy and shop around so that they're getting the very best tariff for their circumstances. With housing, as I said, this is an issue of great concern that we think will get a spike in inquiries from April of this year. We can support people challenging evictions and possession hearings, and again negotiating stuff with the private rented sector. We also have a skilled pathway of training people, so people can access Citizens Advice as a volunteer. We will provide CV writing, interview writing skills, and provide them with a pathway to employment. And 22% of volunteers who leave our service actually secure full-time permanent employment as well. And finally, how do you get in touch with us? There are a number of ways. All our face-to-face physical services are closed at the moment. However, we hope to be rolling them out in the sort of next 12 weeks or so as our key workers, our frontline advice staff, get access to the COVID vaccine. So at the moment, we're delivering virtual in-person advice. We've created on our website a virtual interview room, a virtual waiting room where people can chat pretty much like we're doing now and get the advice they need. We have telephone advice in hours and out of hours. Out of hours 6 to 9 Monday to Friday, and 6 till 9 Saturday and Sunday. And we're also now delivering an out of hours help to claim universal credit service, 10 a.m. till 4 p.m. Saturday and Sunday. For people who love the technology, you can get in touch with us on WhatsApp, Messenger, and we've recently introduced a chatbot service through our website. Details of how you can contact us are there on the slide, and I think that was within my 5 to 8 minutes. Thank you very much for taking the time to listen.
Oh, thank you, Andy. That's really, really interesting. And actually, you know, you've kind of brought to life, in terms of numbers, the things that we hear about on the news all the time, but you've kind of made it relevant to us in our local area by giving some of the Greater Manchester statistics as well. And it is quite scary to hear about the numbers of people that are getting into rent arrears and fuel debt and just general, you know, the need for debt advice on the whole, and that increase, it is quite worrying. So that must be quite daunting for kind of, well, all of you in the roles that you do, in terms of how you prepare for some of those, you know, challenges that are going to come down the line as we get more and more into 2021, where, you know, we're going to have to find some solutions to those and help for those people that are facing those debts. And it can happen to anybody, can't it? You know, even when I think about some of the conversations that we have through work, and, you know, you think about, you're more conscious about you just turning up the heating because you're sat in front of a computer all day long. People are thinking like that more and more now, aren't they? You know, so there are going to be some challenges ahead. It would be interesting to hear from our audience whether they're hearing those kind of things from their workforce, in terms of those particular worries that people are having at the moment. Right, I'm going to come to my last question for Richard then. We know, Richard, that kind of talking about finances and financial well-being, etc., can be quite a sensitive topic. So it's always difficult to get people to open up about it. And I guess with the way that we're all working at the moment, it's kind of hard for employers to read the signs, to pick up when somebody's feeling that stress. So I'm just wondering whether, you know, you've got any kind of ideas for us in terms of, from your experience with both customers and from your workforce, are there any red flags or indicators that employers can be looking for that would indicate somebody's struggling? And have you got any advice on how, from an employer perspective as well, we can reach out to those individuals and give them the help that they need?
Yes, certainly. So good afternoon, everybody. First of all, thank you for inviting me on to the chat today. So quite interesting really around the question that you pose, I think, because, you know, we look at it from two kinds of strands. First of all, you've got your customers that you're always very thoughtful about, but also about the people that work within the business as well. And I think that's the key thing that we've certainly learned over this pandemic, to see changes in how people's behaviours been. I think the first thing that I would say is the one thing that we've learned more than anything is the regularity of getting to know the individual. So people within your business, to give you a quick idea, we'll do regular one-to-ones with those colleagues, Wellbeing one-to-ones, which is to understand, first of all, them as an individual, their family kind of situation. And you've got to build a rapport with people, because I feel that people will open up to you more if they feel like they've got that connection. And that's a really key thing, that, you know, whether we're trying to get a better performance from people who work within your business, you know, things are going on in their lives constantly, whether it's money issues, or other wellbeing issues that we're not aware of. And I think the key to it is to get to know the individuals. And once you're on that level and you've got that real concern and view of what's going on in their life, then that's when hopefully people start to open up. What do we have as a business? Again, I think in my 20 greatly, and what we're able to offer colleagues first and foremost, and that is around different initiatives, different pathways. Sometimes people don't always want to talk to people that they know. They want to speak to somebody independently who don't know them, and that can be very important for people. When we look at it from a customer point of view, you've probably seen the campaign that Lloyds have run, which is around the M word. So it's about, don't feel like you're unable to talk about money. It's really important that you open up, and there are people there that can support and help you, whether it's just talking it through, or first of all, whether there are different avenues that people can refer you to give you that kind of support. So I think that there are a couple of things that that I would say, but I've said to people I work with consistently that get to know your people, and if we do that, everybody's different, everybody's got different requirements, but we need to understand what those are to be able to help.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful. I was just going to ask as well, Richard.
I'm not sure whether we've lost Carol.
Oh, have you lost me?
No, I can see you.
Have you lost your connection, Richard?
No.
You got it back? While you're just oh yeah,
Carol, can I just pick up on the question as well, if I may?
Of course you
So,
can.
yeah, since Vice, we employ about 140 people. At the start of the pandemic, we simply lifted and shifted the vast majority of them to work from home. And I think what we got in the early months of the pandemic was a great deal of goodwill of people working from home and doing an absolutely fantastic job. But then I think what you start to notice is those red flags as people's personal resilience starts to get really tested by particularly this continuous roller coaster of lockdown, unlockdown, and lockdown. So some of the signs that we look out for, and where we try to put in additional support for people that we employ, is what are the changes in behaviour? So are there any signs of stress? Is a colleague acting in a way that is different than they normally act? Are they becoming irritable? Are they turning up late for work or logging on the computer late? Are they absent? What's the tone of voice like? Are they as bubbly as they used to be, or are they in conflict situations? And I think where we can possibly help employers is through some of the packages that we provide around conflict resolution, conflict prevention, resilience training, and some facilitated conversations between people. So if people are seeing those red flags, you can call on organisations like Cint Device and some mediation organisations to provide packages of support to get you around those difficulties.
That's really helpful, and I think a lot of those the things that you've commented on there in terms of changes in behaviour, they're little things, aren't they? But actually, when you kind of put them all together, can give you a very clear sign that somebody is really struggling. So it is about being kind of aware and being perceptive to those changes all the time, isn't it? I think the other thing that I was wanting to say as well is kind of through the work that you all do, is that I think people need to realise that there's no judgment in any of this. If people are struggling, it is okay to kind of come forward and say that they're struggling, and it's not going to have any adverse impact upon them in terms of opening up about that. You're all there to help them, and I think that's the message that we need to be getting across to people.
Georgia, I don't know whether you can hear us or whether there's any questions come through that any of us can answer whilst we try and reconnect Carol.
I think it's just you with the issue at the minute, Richard. I think George is trying to sort that out for you. I think most people are okay. I think so, yeah. So, I mean, in terms of, James, from your perspective, I mean, are you seeing that people, you know, when they come to you to access your service, do they feel confident, or do you get a sense that they feel kind of embarrassed or nervous? Or...
Yeah, there's definitely a sense of nervousness. One of the things that we talk about with people a lot is, and Andy will have a good understanding of this as well, is building people's confidence in terms of those issues. And one of the challenges that we find as an organisation, and I've worked on both sides of the coin. Before I worked for the Money and Pension Service, I used to work for the same bank as Richard does, actually, for many, many years, helping people who are in financial difficulty and in vulnerable circumstances. And that engagement piece, people starting to engage with a trusted partner, whether that's ourselves, whether that's with a bank, or whether that's with an organisation like Andy's or Phil's, that's part of the challenge. But once people start on that journey, things can improve, and they can improve in a really straightforward way. So that is definitely part of the challenge. And I think you're right, the kind of lockdown situation has made that harder for people. Not everyone's great at digital engagement. I'll be honest with you, I get to the end of the day and I think my eyes are kind of going everywhere because I've been on so many webinars, you know. So I was working with a housing association yesterday, and beyond the really great things that Andy was talking about, they built in, who are one of my partners, they build in some just really practical things, like all the meetings that they have are either 25 minutes or 55 minutes, so that people aren't ending up doing a 9 till 10, a 10 till 11, 11 till 12. And they try and make sure everybody gets a lunch hour. Sometimes that's not possible. There might be an emergency problem with their housing, but working with their colleagues yesterday, that really resonated with us. And I know, speaking to my colleagues, we have, as some of you will know, a big head office in London. You know, so we have a particular challenge with some of our colleagues just physically. Do they have, you know, the colleagues who are in their 20s and 30s might not own their own house. There might be flat sharing. One of the chaps who does, Harry, who does a lot of the IT work for me, has had that exact challenge. So, you know, he's come into the office. We've had to reclose the office in London, unfortunately, but he's come into the office some days because he wants, for his well-being, it's actually better to be in the building because he can get on with the work and do more work. There's many desks that are empty behind him, to be quite honest. I speak to him. But yeah, I think there's some, for us as an organisation and working with people on this kind of call, there's some strategic things we can do, which perhaps goes back to things like the Money Navigator tool we were talking about earlier, Carol. And then there's some very practical things that we've talked about. I know Richard's just talked about, and Andy as well. So I think it's a balance. And you know, I had to learn myself. I kind of got to the point where I probably was doing too much digital stuff and tried to start picking up the phone and speaking to people and just communicating with people in a slightly different way. Because the first few months, I think I probably became, I don't know, a digital time lord really for webinars. I just probably went a bit overboard. Oh, Carol, I think we've lost you now. Georgia, have we got just me, Andy and Phil, or is there anybody else? Ah, Carol, you're back.
I don't know what's going on. So I think it's this rain that's interfering with everything because it's certainly hammering down where I am. Yeah, I think you're right. I think things become overwhelming, and I think sometimes when people have got other worries as well, things can seem as if they are insurmountable, and people can't kind of find a way through it. But there is so much help and support out there, isn't it? And for me, I think it is about, you know, kind of emphasizing to people that, you know, it's better to, if people are worried and people are concerned, and if they have got an issue, to kind of start raising it earlier rather than letting it snowball, because people can help from an earlier stage and stop it becoming a bigger problem. And I guess from an employer's perspective as well, Phil, with the work that you're doing, you know, you're there to help employers as well. If they can see a problem on the horizon, that's what you do too, isn't it? You give that help to them so that they can navigate the way through it.
Yeah, it is very much. I mean, my bit of the world for national minimum wage, it's very much a two-pronged thing. We're very interested in employers and trying to help them as much as possible to get it right first time. That's the ideal situation. And as you can imagine, there's lots of kind of support and advice available to employers in that respect. But we're kind of equally interested in the workers as well. And we're increasingly trying to encourage workers to come forward, query their situation with respect to national minimum wage. And if they think they've got an issue, come forward and make a complaint. And they can either do that by contacting ACAS through the Pay and Work Rights helpline. If they want to speak to somebody, and if it sounds like a bit of an issue, they get transferred across to HMRC as a warm handover. So a very kind of, friendly service, if you like. Or alternatively, it's the kind of thing they can do online, quick 5-minute job, submit a form on gov.uk 24 hours a day type thing. But it's quite interesting at the moment. We see a lot of variation in our complaint levels anyway. At the moment in time, they're a little bit suppressed. Now, that could be for any number of reasons, but it could indeed be that people are feeling more vulnerable at the moment, perhaps questioning the merit of coming forward and raising a complaint. Of course, we would always encourage them to do so, but kind of recognising that people are in difficult circumstances at the moment.
Yeah. We've had a question in from Donald, who's from Rowlinsons. And Donald's question is around 20% of British adults will struggle to pay an unexpected bill of just £20 and 67% difficult in paying £500. And we know from the work that we do with Rowlinsons that they do provide interest-free loans and money management training. But Donald's asking, is there anything available that employers can display at work to help signpost those in need? So are there any resources that we can direct our supporters and members to that they could put in the workplace or disseminate to the workforce? We've got the resources that we'll put on our website afterwards. But is there anything else specific that we can have or that they could display just to signpost people?
Yes, certainly we can provide materials to people that make our services really visible to staff. And just I mentioned in the chat, to pick up on your point, the earlier people get in touch, the better. And in many cases, we can then prevent something that's quite small snowballing into a major crisis, and we can put solutions and strategies in place for people. But certainly we can get some marketing material out, maybe through yourselves.
That'd be fantastic. We're happy to put as many resources as we can do on our website to help people, and we'll put them on at the end of the session. That would be fantastic. George is apologising for some of the technical difficulties that we've had.
And Carol, just to add to Andy's point there, that's a very valid point by Andy. From our side, we have some information about the other side of that equation, trying to build up a rainy day fund. We understand that a lot of people saving in the current climate, and in any climate, is a real challenge for millions and millions of people right across the country. Yeah. We certainly have information on our website that is about trying to start, even if it's a very small start, whatever the case may be, £5 a month, and starting to get that rainy day savings fund going. Because you're absolutely right in terms of the question that's come in, so many millions of people have less than £100 or no savings at all, and therefore anything that comes along is almost instantly a crisis issue. So yeah, it's good we can certainly supply you with the links that we provide in terms of that Carol for passing on.
That would be really good. We're almost at the end of the session. It does always go so quickly whenever we do these. So we usually run for about kind of 45 minutes or so. I'm just going to shout out to just see if anybody has got any final questions before we start to close up the session. But while people might be thinking about any last minute questions, I'll just reiterate the offer that if people do want to ask something and don't want to put it in the chat, that we will pick up individual questions outside of this with our panel speakers if people want that. I want to thank the panel. It's been really interesting. I've learned a lot today, and I hope that you all have too. And I want to thank you all on our panel for giving up your valuable time. I know how busy everybody is. And just to kind of remind people that we will put the resources on our website, and would encourage you to use them. And if you think of any other things that you would find helpful from us, we'll certainly make sure we can find some extra information. And I suppose the last thing for me to say is just I hope that you enjoy the rest of your week. These weeks just all merge into one at the moment, don't they? And thank you all once again for joining us this afternoon, and we look forward to seeing you at our next session. So again, thank you to our panel. Thanks everybody. Okay, see you later. Bye. Thanks.